All right, we're about 2 minutes past. I think we can get started. A couple of housekeeping items. I'm going to post in the chat. The chat will be closed for this evening. We'll be receiving questions via email, provide instructions in the chat window for that. Also, to make it easier for folks, because there's quite a few boxes on the screen if you're in gallery view. For those who haven't used Zoom before, I know in the era of COVID, there's probably not too many, but just in case, in the top right corner, there is a view button. You can select that and pivot to speaker view so that it'll just show whoever's speaking at the moment versus the Hollywood Squares box that's the default most of the time. So just a quick note there. Okay, so let's kick it off. Anyone who joins in late, well, we have folks that can let them into the forum, so no issues there. So I want to take a moment out first off and welcome all our parents, teachers, community members, and thank you for joining us tonight to learn more about our bond referendum. It's so important to the school, but also to all Haworth residents. I also want to thank our panelists tonight. We have quite a few people on. They'll discuss key details about the project, our financial strategy, what students stand to gain, and also answer questions about the referendum, during the evening as you send them in. We also want the community to feel like they're informed and armed and ready to make a decision on where they stand to vote on March 8th. All right, so for your convenience, we have organized the forum into several segments, so you can tune in for specific topics. So you can see that on screen. The forum is also being recorded, so just so you know, and will be posted on the haworth.org for the kids website. And we'll also have a direct link on YouTube. To ask questions anytime during the forum, email forthekids@nvnet.org. And we'll be taking questions this way to allow us to discuss them and direct them to the panelists during the appropriate segment. So while topics are coming up, we'll try and flow them to that segment based on the agenda. And we'll answer as many questions as we can tonight. If we run out of time before getting to all the questions, we'll follow up after the forum. So if you do send a question in and it doesn't get read out tonight and responded to live, we will get back to you directly via email. So we're not going to be turning away any questions. It's just a matter of timing, but we'll get back to everyone individually if we can't fit it into this evening's session. Community involvement has been key to this referendum process from the beginning. Members of our school community have helped form our strategic plan that identified priorities such as our innovative learning spaces. This forward-thinking bond referendum embodies Haworth's continued mission of building for the future for the kids. So now for a preview of how our school could look, I'd like to hand it over to Ken Mahalik of RSE Architects and Paul Wolford, our business administrator, to share renderings and aspirational photos, as well as more details about the proposed projects. So Ken and Paul.
Thanks, Michael. I'm ready to present the project to the community. Good evening, everybody. So our updated facilities would support modern educational needs. This is going to be the overall overriding goal of this project. This is going to include expansion of Hawk Hall, which is the middle school wing of the building. This is the wing that extends to the north of the building. And this will include a makerspace and a media center. The makerspace will be a hub for technology, such as drones, robotics, and 3D printers. What you're seeing here, what you just saw on the screen, was a rendering view of how that might look from the exterior. Also included in the Hawk Hall edition with the media center, with age-appropriate design for collaboration and technical materials. This is a rendering image of what that could look like. We're also envisioning a separate entrance for the middle school for Hawk Hall to identify this as the middle school for the building. The wing would also contain a student and staff learning center, which is intended to serve as a facility to educate students in how to make presentations, and also a place to receive guest speakers So it's generally meant to be an event space. Mike, I'll hand this back to you. So also part of the project will be expanding the gym to a high school regulation size, adding bleachers, and also storage. So the existing gym would become a full-size gym that could be used by the students as well as the community. Also, part of the project will be adding 4 new classrooms to the east side of the building. These would serve as 4 general classrooms. So since the middle school will have its own media center, we're envisioning an elementary school media center renovation. So the existing media center would be renovated to include play-based activity and learning, and also would have engaging, colorful design as part of the project. The lower level of the existing building would be converted to pre-K special ed classrooms. Child study team would be located here because of the existing child study team location is in a deteriorated format right now. And the administrative offices would move upstairs to the middle school wing.
Got it. I had some audio issues, I think, before. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I think we wanted to pivot over to Paul as our business administrator. Could you tell us more about how the projects might save money or potentially generate revenue?
Sure. There are actually 3 main components where we can generate revenue with this project. First and foremost is the gym. We're super excited about the possibility of having a regulation gym size. We're going to finally match some of those other Northern Valley school districts and what their residents have. So we're excited about that. Where that's going to come into play with our revenue is for our building usage. We now can maybe offer indoor soccer, just a larger market that we're going to be able to be exposed to with the gym and the needs of that larger market. So we're excited just immediately having an impact on the revenue side with the gym and the building usage fees. And the next largest component for revenue, generating that revenue is the pre-K. Obviously, it's a tuition-based program. The plan right now offers for 2 sections, and with max capacity there at basically $10,000 per student, we're looking into a pretty good steady stream of revenue there. And kind of an offshoot of that is we're anticipating that that's actually going to increase our enrollment within our aftercare. Currently, our largest population within aftercare is our K-2. So we feel that the pre-K will fit right there in that niche as well. And so we'll have some trickle, revenue coming in from the aftercare with the addition of the pre-K. And finally, is with a new special education the program in the 4 classrooms Ken mentioned before. In the theory of a penny saved is a penny earned, we currently send out our pre-K students with special needs for out-of-district placement. Once we have a pre-K program, we can offer those services. We'll keep them in-house. In addition to, we send out a lot of our population K-8 that have special needs to where we don't have the programming to offer those services. We send them out of district. Roughly over the past 3 years, on average, we've spent about $600,000 on tuition and transportation for those students. So with these new classrooms, construction would enable us to provide space and resources to offer the appropriate service for those students, and we can keep them in-house. So saving on the tuition, saving on the transportation is going to be a huge gain for the district within our special education program. And additionally, depending on kind of the availability of the spots that we have, by opening up some of those programs, if we have the space, we can offer some spots to our neighboring towns, maybe in the Valley or Bergen County, and that would generate further revenue.
Great. Looks like we do have one or two questions coming in, so just bear with me. This is one I've actually heard before at some interactions with parents, very specific to the timeline. So maybe for Ken, can you talk a bit about the timeline for the projects?
Yes. Assuming that the referendum does pass, which we expect it will, we will need probably about 6 to 7 months of design time, which would take us into the fall months, at which time we could wrap up the drawings and submit for final approvals from the state, from the New Jersey Department of Education, and also submit for building permits. I'm sorry, and then go out to bid before we go for permits. I would say that the whole process would probably wrap up by the end of this year, with us being able to start construction in early 2023. And we would anticipate probably a 15-month duration for construction. And the project would be phased. We're anticipating that phase 1 would be the additions that I described earlier. And then the phase 2 would be the renovation work, which would include the gym, the interior library renovations at the elementary school, as well as the lower level pre-K and child study team spaces. So all told, we're probably expecting to be done probably in middle of 2024 at this point.
Got it. Another question that's related to the timeline that the parents typically have asked is around impacts, any impact to the students that are going to be attending the school, and how we factor the construction and, whether it's the phasing or the timing of the projects, into that to minimize disruption to students. Can you talk a bit about that as well?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, the beautiful part about the project, especially the phase 1, is that it's all construction that can be done without terribly disrupting the existing activities. It's all, the additions are all being added to the exterior of the building, which allows the existing school operation to continue without having to disrupt or have construction activity occurring in or around students. So we would anticipate that we could build these additions and then break through, at the last minute. And then that enables us to go ahead with the phase 2 work, which would be, a little more disruptive, but we will be able to shift the people that are currently down in the lower level of the building into the new addition. So again, we're not really anticipating any construction that's going to be affecting the daily operations of the school.
Great. And then it looks, what happens if project costs are higher than estimates?
Well, state regulations require that a significant contingency be included in the referendum to cover any unknown costs that could come out of the bidding environment, and that could hopefully reduce or handle any of those potential cost overruns. If the costs do come in high and the contingency is not enough to cover it, we would then have to go back and revisit the plans and see, find ways to reduce costs, maybe change some things on the floor plans to bring it more in line with the budget.
Got it. And then another question, it kind of dovetails on, this is for Paul, on the revenue answer that you kind of provided a little bit earlier, Paul. In terms of the pre-K, how much revenue would the district take in from pre-K after accounting for staffing costs?
Sure, and I'll kind of give you some rough numbers here. The plan calls for 2 sections, roughly 12 to 14 students there. Being conservative and saying their tuition would be about $10,000. In the end, we're anticipating max capacity revenue of about $280,000. And to staff the 2 classrooms with 2 teachers and 2 aides, inclusive of salary and benefits, it would be about $190,000. So right off the bat, we're making $90,000 with kind of a conservative tuition estimate there with the pre-K.
Great, thank you. And then it looks like another question coming in about the affordable housing units. Does the plan account for potential influx of students? So I can jump in on this one. There's a lot of unknowns still about, especially the future projects which haven't been developed or planned for. There's just in the the settlement with the town. So there's not a lot that we can forecast for. I mean, we can make assumptions, but then those assumptions could be grossly inadequate. Now, all we do know is the housing that's currently under construction under Schaefer's Garden, and even with that, we don't know the demographics of what's expected to move in or who's going to purchase and move into those units. What we can say is, without the 4 new classrooms that are part of this plan, the only place to put any influx of students is into existing classrooms and increase the size of the number of students in those classrooms. So the additional classrooms does allow us to have flexibility for influx of students, regardless of whether it be they're coming from other towns, other states, part of the new units or new constructions that are being built. But there's no specific plan to address the future building and settlement that comes out of the affordable housing plan at this time. Okay, so moving on, we're very proud of Haworth's status as a top performing school. It's the kind of school that draws people to move here, right? That was just talked about by the influx of potential students. But education is changing. We want to make sure that our students are prepared. Today's students are expected to be well-versed in technology and know their way around engineering and design concepts by the time they reach high school. We need to give students the foundation that will enable them to pursue careers that do not yet exist. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to our principal, Patty Voigt, and our science and STEAM instructor, Julianne McCurry, to share a bit about the current innovative instruction students are receiving today and what they could do with more resources. Again, just a reminder before I give them the floor, if you do have questions, like I said, we just got a few in while Paul and Ken were speaking, for the kids at nvnet.org, and we'll try to answer them while we're on the particular subject area. If we don't, we'll get to it during the Q&A at the end. So Mrs. Voigt and Ms. McCreary, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Odino, and thank you to all school community members who are joining us this evening for our virtual forum. You can always count on STEAM projects to light up the minds of all learners K through 8. The STEAM curriculum combines science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. STEAM curriculum guides student inquiry. It encourages discussion and problem solving. The skills that are learned within our STEAM lessons are skills that are needed for our 21st century jobs. The students who graduate from our school will need not only the academics that they will learn here, but they will also need the skills of collaboration and divergent and flexible thinking. Students will need to be able to access and use different technologies and to solve problems independently and with groups of peers. And all of those skills will be needed in high school and also when our students enter the workforce. As the principal of our school, I am excited about the potential for a dedicated makerspace. A makerspace is a communal place inside of a school filled with tools and components where students can enter with an idea and leave having created something. Currently, STEAM lessons are going on throughout our school, but the technology is not in one central location and is kind of scattered throughout our school. The poster printer, 3D printers are in the back of the NPR stage, or maybe the supplies needed to engineer prototypes are in the art room. Our VEX robots, Spheros, Bebots, and Ozobots are kind of throughout our school as well. A dedicated space or makerspace will create opportunities for students to work together, to problem solve, and to train in the technologies of tomorrow. Students would be able to work with drones, robotics, virtual and augmented reality, 3D printing, digital design, maybe use fabrics with the use of a sewing machine or woodworking, and other emerging technology all in one space. This makerspace mirrors the environment that our students will be working in as they get older. A dedicated makerspace would support not only our full STEAM curriculum, but it would also allow for after-school maker clubs, robotic programs, allow our students to fully participate in STEAM competitions within Bergen County and throughout the state. And it may even open the door for summer enrichment activities. There is so much that could happen in that space, a maker space, and it would be so beneficial for our students to move them forward in the future. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Mrs. McKeary, who is one of our science teachers in the middle school. She would like to tell you from a teacher's perspective why she feels there is a need for a dedicated makerspace, and tell us about ways in which she can use this space to develop the design thinking skills needed for our students' future success in high school and beyond.
You're on mute, Ms. McCurry.
Sorry about that. All righty. Thank you, Mrs. Voigt and Mr. Rodino. Did you know that careers in STEAM are some of the fastest growing fields in America? According to Georgetown University, in the year 2020, careers in STEAM grew 26% since the year 2010, only second to healthcare professionals. So why is this important? As we continue to see a demand for careers in these fields, it is essential that we prepare our students for the future, and that starts here at the Haworth Public School. Students love hands-on learning because it's engaging and allows them to problem solve, all while manipulating materials. So how can we enhance hands-on learning at HPS? Well, it starts with a dedicated space for the learning to happen. This is what is known as a makerspace. When I think about the current learning that is done in my classroom, I see motivated students with great ideas, but who are limited in materials and in space. A makerspace would enhance current projects as well as open the door to endless opportunities. For example, in the 7th grade, students participate in a course for young entrepreneurs called TREPS. In this class, the students are tasked with starting a business of their choice, marketing their product, creating inventory, and then selling their product to community members at the culminating marketplace event. How exciting would it be for our students to have a space to actually create their inventory, whether it be a design studio with different fabrics and sewing machines, or a laser cutting station to engrave custom charcuterie boards. A second example is our 3D printing unit in the middle school. Students are taught how to design various things on several programs. This year, students drafted and designed their very own dream houses. It was at this point that we ran into an issue. Our current 3D printers are scattered between the science lab, the NPR stage, the art room, and are not up to date enough to print advanced projects. So while the digital design skill was learned, we had to stop there and couldn't actually print their projects. A makerspace will maximize learning because it is functional in its setup. It provides a safe place for tools that might otherwise be dangerous in a traditional classroom, such as hot glue guns, power tools, and it allows materials and tools to remain central in one place. While the learning that is going on in our school is fantastic, it has the potential to be taken to the next level with a dedicated space like a makerspace. By providing a space like this for our students, we are setting them up for success at the high school, college, and beyond. A makerspace will allow our students to get ahead of the curve, and now more than ever, it is crucial that we prepare our students for what lies ahead of them.
All right. So thank you both. We have some questions coming in. There's one here for, maybe we can go to Mrs. Voigt. It looks like a question is around the media center and specifically for the middle school. Why do we need a separate media center for the middle school? And what's the benefit?
A dedicated media center is so important in the middle school. We have a library outside the kindergarten and first grade wing that's full of lots of books. But in the middle school, I believe we need a media center, which I like to call kind of an information technology hub. And in this information technology hub media center, the students at the middle school can access books and magazines and other printed resources. However, they can also access all the digital repositories that are out there. Having a designated area with learning computers gives students a quicker ability to find what they need for their extensive research projects or class projects. A media center can also be a place where our students can meet to study with one another. And it's also kind of a natural place for students to decompress. If you think about our town library, it's more than just books. So a middle school media center would be used for class presentations, a place where teachers can bring an entire class to work on research, or it could be used for a poetry event or an open mic night or other educational events. So the possibilities are endless and much needed in our middle school.
Thank you. And Mrs. McCreary, going back to STEAM, why can't students just do STEAM in their current classrooms?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit, but when you think of a traditional classroom, you most likely think of a set of individual desks, maybe a table here and there, one or two whiteboards, a projector screen, typically reasonable in size, but not in comparison to what we would expect a makerspace to be. And one key reason that I would think that a makerspace is beneficial is for safety. So when I think about my classroom and different things that we do, right, we often need to use tools like hot glue guns, wood cutters. And while we do our best to make sure that all students are safe, it's really not the optimal setup for these tools. They really, each individual tool, like a 3D printer and a hot glue gun and a power drill and a sewing machine, should require its own unique setting. You wouldn't want a hot glue gun, for example, on an individual student's desk or in a space where there's student books on the ground and potential for somebody to trip. The second reason I think it would be beneficial to have a makerspace as opposed to conducting STEAM lessons in our current traditional classrooms is because the setup. So again, when you think of a makerspace and when you think of these STEAM projects, the first thing that comes to my mind is collaboration and teamwork. And again, while we encourage that in our current classrooms, the setup is really not functional as much as it would be in a makerspace. A makerspace you would hope would have, right, like large tables, lots of whiteboards, even tables that have whiteboard tops. And this really allows students to brainstorm or even attempt to digital design. So I find that sometimes students right now are struggling to organize materials and they're often all huddled around one individual desk, whereas a makerspace, as you can see in the picture, is a lot larger and allows for the collaboration to kind of happen naturally.
Great. And as a follow-up question to that, and kind of touching back on some of the opening comments, how does STEAM instruction help students in terms of future career paths?
Yeah, so currently in the United States, right, it's estimated that about 20% of all jobs require some form of STEAM thinking. And so this leads us to believe that STEAM doesn't really refer so much to as just an industry, but rather a set of skills that are essential. With that said, right, we think of teamwork, problem solving, design thinking, and so many more essential skills. And if we just think about our everyday lives, whether you work at home or whether you're having family over, collaborating with siblings, going to the gym, you engage in these skills multiple times a day, whether it's at work or not. So teamwork, compromise, constructive criticism are skills required to complete even just an engineering task in our school. What would a student do if they, pitched an idea and their peers didn't agree with it, or there was a group of 4 and they all had different ideas? Sometimes right now we find that, especially as students are learning to mature, they struggle to take constructive criticism. They struggle when their idea isn't the chosen idea, if you will. So a maker space where there's tons of open space for collaboration. Like I said, there's whiteboards and they can draw and they can combine design elements is really optimal for the collaboration to happen. And so these skills are essential in any career path, and a true STEAM instruction from a young age can help better develop these skills in our students so that they can get ahead of the curve and kind of better prepare themselves for high school, college, and beyond.
Great. Looks like we had another question just come in, maybe for Mrs. Voigt, or we could also expand it out. In terms of, the school's programming, we're talking about STEAM, new facilities, all these great, new things to bring in to help, plan for future career growth, et cetera. How will the school's programming evolve to maximize this new facility with fully integrated curricula that span the student's career at HPS, and something that we've talked about a bit as a board, the need to actually plan for it, but to the educators and on the panel, I'll open that up to you and maybe start with Mrs. Voigt.
Well, one way, actually, our computer design standards are changing. We're actually writing that curriculum this year, and the STEAM room and a maker space will help us with that new curriculum. I think many times teachers, and I know Julianne and sorry, Ms. Barclay, Ms. McCreary and Ms. Burkholder often say this to me, that they are limited. They're limited in what they can do in their classroom. So a lot of the ideas that they have, they kind of have to limit the possibilities that they can do in their classroom and for the students. So I think it opens the door to expand the curriculum and to do things like woodworking and have sewing machines and technologies that are important for the future. So for sure, I think it's definitely needed. And because we will hopefully have this space, we'll be able to kind of tweak our curriculum to include those types of technologies, which we're kind of limited to now with the space that we have.
Right, right. I think it's fair to say that assuming, we'd have to get this referendum passed in order to even have any programming changes. And then if it is passed, then we'd have to look at revamping curriculum and programs and maximize the use of all of the new facilities and the new spaces. So thank you. Okay, moving on a bit, our students are all so important to us. We feel a particular responsibility towards students who need extra support. The referendum would significantly expand our ability to serve students with special needs. We want to hear more about that, and we have Dr. Hughes and Erin Carr on, who's a learning disabilities teacher consultant with our child study team, and I'd like to hand it over to them to cover that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. First of all, welcome all of our parents. We have 114 people on tonight at this time, so that's a really amazing number. Please tell your friends. This is recorded and will be available later as well. To begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about the moral imperative that we have. We have to ensure that our students have their needs serviced. And part of that is really ensuring that they have the space to be successful. And space is something that we are currently lacking. At present, a lot of our students are actually being sent out of district because we don't have the space to actually create the right program for them to stay in Haworth School. So my goal is to ensure that Haworth students are able to attend Haworth School. Neighborhood students should always be able to attend their local district, and that's kind of our belief and our philosophy. It's also the best thing financially for the district as well, because currently we spend $600,000 per year in the past 3 years on tuition costs, and those costs can be reclaimed to a certain degree. 4 new classrooms would let us educate more Haworth students in Haworth. New classrooms also would help maintain small class sizes. The need for space is right now. This school year, we increased second and third grades each by 1 section. They're now at 3 sections. We've used every classroom space in the building at this point. Without adding on, we only have the option of increasing class sizes, even though we know that small classes let teachers have one-to-one impact with students, and they really get to know their students much better. And to talk a little bit about the impact on special education, I'm going to turn it over to Erin Carr, our learning specialist.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And good evening, everyone. I've been a staff member at the Haworth Public School since the start of the 2005-2006 school year. So I've kind of seen firsthand how things have really changed and grown over time. I was a general education teacher for 12 years and have spent the past 5 years as the learning consultant on the child study team. As a member of the child study team, that involves evaluating students, case managing, and developing IEPs. Part of my job involves frequently observing students and collaborating with teachers. And depending on what a child's individual needs are, we either service the students in district, while other students receive their programming and related service at an out of district placement, as has been mentioned. Because of logistics, we're not able to see our out of district students and collaborate with their teachers on a regular basis like we do with our in-district students. If this referendum were to pass, we'd be able to service many of our out-of-district students at Haworth Public School, which would allow for much more flexibility. And we'd be able to support them and monitor their progress just as much as we do with our in-district students. Don't get me wrong, servicing our in-district students, as Dr. Hughes had mentioned, can certainly become challenging because we are kind of limited right now on the space that we have. Our students who receive related services of physical therapy and occupational therapy sometimes receive those services in hallways or on our gym or multi-purpose room stages, which, it works, but it's less than ideal. Our rooms that are used to provide pull-out resource programming are definitely on the smaller side. And it's not always conducive to those students who really need more space to kind of move around and learn. What used to be our Board of Education conference room has been converted into 2 small classrooms so that our teachers have space to provide ELL instruction and basic skills instruction. And also due to spacing issues, it's become a bit of a challenge during the times when we have district testing like Linkit or the state testing like NJSLA for those students who receive small group testing due to needing frequent breaks or extended time. It's a challenge to kind of find space around the building for them to take those tests. We're really trying to be resourceful at this point, but space is getting really maxed out. In addition to the classroom space being an issue, our child study team office is becoming very tight and not as safe as it should be. With more space, we could offer valuable activities, and the new CST offices that are a part of this proposed referendum plan would allow for more privacy and a direct entrance for parents from the outside. Currently, when we have meetings with parents, when they come into school, they have to walk through the entire school building to get to our offices. And when it comes to special education, confidentiality is extremely, extremely important. Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the proposed preschool program?
Sure. Actually, the proposed preschool, as Paul had alluded to, would save in tuition costs as well. Students with special needs are entitled by state law to attend pre-K, and we pay for those costs. Currently, these students attend pre-K outside of Haworth on a tuition basis, and this is why pre-K is a priority in Haworth within the referendum. It's the best thing for the kids, and it's the best thing for the budget. With pre-K, Haworth could offer same services as other Northern Valley districts. We are currently the only Northern Valley district not to have pre-K in our building. Pre-K would also be a convenience to our families and would make the transition to kindergarten even easier. Our specialists and our child study team could get to know those children at an earlier age and better know their needs prior to kindergarten. So those are all benefits to bringing a pre-K program into our school. But in order to do so, we need the space.
Thank you both. One question coming in, unless we actually have a couple on deck. One from community members who are still in town but don't have children in the school any longer and may have sent their kids to school. It's like 20 plus years ago. Enrollments, I guess, used to be this high or even higher, at that time. Why can't we fit all the students like we did back then?
I'll take that one, Mike. I think that when you look back in time, the needs of kids were very different at that point. We didn't have all of the extra specials included. We didn't have the extra technology programs included. The STEAM is something that's emergent. It's something that's new, that's really going to give our kids an advantage. So when you look at how schools have evolved, they've also started to increase the number of special services that are offered to our kids in order to make sure that every child has equity in their educational program and can access the highest level of instruction. So I think that those things all require space. And we also enjoy having smaller class sizes because it makes a difference in the relationships between the kids and the teachers as well. So those are all good points that kind of have shown the evolution of education and why it's important at this point.
Right. On a similar note, the gym has been the same size for as long as people can remember. How does expanding the gym help Haworth and the students?
Yeah, I'll take that one as well. This is a really important question because when you think about what we're supposed to be doing in schools, we need to prepare our kids to transition to the high school. We are currently the only district in Northern Valley that does not have a regulation size gym. And we'd prefer to have our kids be able to access the same programs that the other districts have going for them. And they should be able to access the same size courts that they're going to access at the high school level. So that's a piece of it. And then there's also the additional piece of really Haworth pride and Hawk pride and giving people an opportunity to watch our games. Currently, people have to observe a lot of our volleyball games from the stage, which is just not ideal. The referendum incorporates stadium seating for people to observe and come and cheer on our kids. So I think it will be really a good thing for our athletics program as well.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah. And then on, more of a logistical question, adding a, pre-K class or classes at Haworth. Obviously that is a new set of children being dropped off, also would need access not potentially, will need access to the facilities and outdoor space and playground. How would we factor that in, whether it be, traffic drop off or usage of shared space?
So there's really two pieces of thought that we put into this. Number one, we wanted to put the pre-K in an area that could access easily the outside facilities for the kindergarten playground. We would create independent time for pre-K alone to have that access to that space, just like we schedule every one of our classes to have dedicated time on the playground. As far as traffic is concerned, we may have to look at traffic logistics. We could look at potentially staggering the start and end times for pre-K just to make it a little bit safer. That, of course, will be something we have to kind of plan out as we go forward. So that's to come once the referendum is finalized.
Right. Great. Thank you both. All right, moving on a bit. We are moving forward with this referendum because the board does believe it's the best strategy to fund needed improvements. It is the only way also for school districts to access a specific type of state aid. Haworth will use money also from its capital reserve funds to reduce impact to taxpayers. And I'd like to ask Mr. Wolford to come back on and also introduce Tony Solomine, our bond counsel, to talk a bit about our funding strategy.
Thanks, Mike. Tony Salmini from Woodlands, Goldman and Spitzer. I know everyone's heard the term referendum. What does that mean? Basically, it's a public vote to authorize a type 2 school district like Haworth to authorize the issuance of debt to pay for these exciting projects that have been described by your architect and by your administrative team. It's kind of similar to in your own personal lives, if you take out a mortgage or a business loan, to basically undertake a construction project. So it'll give you the upfront capital to do the project, and then you repay it back over time. This is the only way that a school district can actually borrow money is through a voter approved referendum. And as Mike said, your district has done a really good job of putting money in its capital reserve account, which I know Paul is going to talk about to supplement the project. And also this is the only way to take advantage of getting state aid. Is by borrowing money. So that's currently the only program from the New Jersey Department of Education that can access any funds available to you for a construction project is if you authorize the issuance of debt.
Got it. So the total costs for the proposed improvements are around 8.2 million. The board plans a two-pronged strategy to reduce impact to taxpayers. Part of it's using capital reserve funds, and the other part you just mentioned, Tony, is state aid. Paul, can you explain how the funding streams work and what help pay for the projects?
Sure. Sorry, I exit full screen here. So as you mentioned before, what we're going to do is we're going to contribute what's in essence is our school's savings account from our capital reserve. It's money that we put away for a rainy day or for an emergency situation where we need to replace a boiler or even a roof for that matter. So we're going to apply $2 million upfront from our capital reserve, which will reduce the overall cost for funding to about 6.2 million from the 8.2 million. That's obviously going to lessen the burden for the taxpayers, but still keep a large number that's eligible for state aid with that 6.2 million, as Tony, you mentioned before, with the 8%. We're going to spread that cost of that 6.2 million plus interest over the 20 years. In essence, breaking it down per home, the average home that's assessed at about $630,000 would feel a tax impact of about $25 a month for up to 20 years and investment in the future.
Got it. And then again, just to reiterate, that 478,000 in state aid is only available because a bond is issued and the state provides debt service relief against that borrowing cost.
Yeah, we are only eligible if we have a past referendum.
Right. So without the referendum, without the issuance of debt, there's no option for that level of state aid. All right. So again, district finance is an everyday topic for most people and probably most of the folks on, viewing this forum. Could you walk us through, I think we're going to bring it up on the screen, the reason for pursuing the bond referendum over different types of funding?
Sure. Listen, when I present the budget annually, I always try to equate the Haworth Public School to a home. I mean, it is our home. And a bond referendum is hands down the best strategy to finance kind of a large scale project that we're proposing here. It's like a mortgage you do to renovate your home. Annually we construct a budget that kind of covers our everyday operating expenses, and we're talking about supplies, utilities, payroll, and maintenance. As many of you know here, maintaining a home is expensive, and parts of our home at Haworth Public School are over 100 years old. We work very, very hard every year to build these kind of the maintenance and upkeep of grounds within our budget and our general budget. But some of these projects do have kind of significant costs. They greatly impact our budget and our capital reserve. You may have seen some of them in recent years. We have completely renovated the sidewalk around the school, resurfaced the driveway to make it safer, constructed a retaining wall around the corner of the driveway to enable us to place a sidewalk there to make it safer for students. We've replaced overhead HVAC systems on the rooftop. We've created outdoor classrooms during COVID for outdoor learning. And those projects range from 15,000 to 300,000. So that was kind of, obviously the larger the project, the more significant of an impact it is on the budget and your withdrawal from capital reserve. However, there's just not enough wiggle room in a budget annually to account for kind of a large scale project such as this. And the bond referendum makes a lot of sense here. It spreads the cost out over 20 years. And we're talking $25 a month for each taxpayer on average assessed home. And plus we do get that free money that you mentioned, Mike, at 8%. That's $500,000 that basically covers the cost of certain items within this project, whether it's facility, outfitting that STEM lab or the media center. That's free money that we want to take advantage of. And that's why, this bond referendum is definitely the best choice to finance the project. Otherwise, we would have to try and piecemeal this large project over a long period of time where it's going to be kind of risky with rising costs, and we don't know what's to be expected. We just lived through a pandemic for 2 years, so we don't know what money we're going to have to spend where tomorrow.
And then what's the advantage of using capital reserves towards the project costs?
I'll keep this simple. So capital reserve is, like I said before, it's our savings account. It's a big advantage because that's taxpayer money that we've put aside for a rainy day and to, assist with the maintenance and upkeep of our building and projects such as this. So by applying that 2 million right away, we have less debt across the board that we need to pay back. The main goal here is to improve our school and to make it even more of a community asset for both the kids and community members. but we also want to minimize the tax impact, and we accomplish this by utilizing that $2 million in capital reserve. One thing I do want to mention as well is that we are not draining our capital reserve. We'll definitely have funds left over set aside for emergency situations. That's how we kind of operate fiscally responsible within the district. But we feel by contributing the $2 million from a reserve, it's a nice balance between investing in our future and saving for the unexpected.
Great. And then in terms of, we talked a bit about the financing. Bond rates obviously have an impact on total costs. Maybe over to Brian. Can you talk a bit about, current bond rates, where things are looking and how the district in terms of borrowing to pay for the projects?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. My name is Brian Morris with Phoenix Advisors, the district's municipal advisor. Throughout this process, we make very conservative estimates on the rates that we could obtain when we borrow funds by selling bonds. Despite the recent upward pressure on interest rates that I'm sure everyone's heard of through inflation and Fed action, it looks like the ultimate interest rate should be comparable to what we initially projected at the beginning of this process and what everyone has talked to you about today, the tax impact. That said, during the 20-year term of the bonds, the actual debt payment and tax impact could also be lower than projected, depending on market conditions at the time of the sale. But overall, the markets, despite some general weakness recently on some of the headline news, are still close to 7-year lows. So it's just definitely a very attractive time to borrow money to finance these important projects.
Great. Thank you. We do have a couple, new questions coming in, not necessarily related to, this section. It looks like a question on average classroom size compared to what it is now. Does the plan take Haworth's population growth into consideration? Maybe for Dr. Hughes, if you can take that in terms of average classroom size and growth, how is that planned for the future?
Sure. When we initially started to plan this referendum, it was prior to any new building in town. So obviously we don't know the new impact that will be felt. However, we do know that the new classrooms that are going to be built will be the same size, if not a little larger than our current classrooms. So just by adding the classroom spaces, we have 4 new classrooms, a new maker space, a new library, as well as the pre-K classrooms. Those are all new spaces that will add to our footprint and our ability to do good things for kids. So.
Great. Another one, this one's related to, staffing, et cetera. We have obviously great teachers and administrators at Haworth, but the labor market is obviously very tight, as we've experienced, trying to hire for, leave replacements and things like that. It's been really difficult to get, quality educators in the building. Do you anticipate these projects would help HPS be more competitive or, an attractive go-to place in the hiring process?
I absolutely think so. I think that it's going to draw in a different quality of applicant, especially when we have great facilities like this. I also do think that even if we do get additional students moving in, you can always offset some of the costs by allowing for banked cap, which is a way to handle large increases in student populations. So I think that these new classroom spaces will kind of give us a pressure valve and the opportunity to really make higher quality programs for the kids, especially in the area of STEAM and the middle school media center. That's right now, our middle school is basically a hallway and there's no real space where the middle schoolers can hang out and really see each other socially. So this is going to become that space for them. So I'm really excited about the entire project. I think it's got amazing potential and will bring us to the next level.
Great. Another one, personnel related. What will we need to hire for, right? If all students, and we're really talking about, the special needs children that are out of district in pre-K, what type of personnel will we need to hire And how much, will these projects impact, staffing, overall?
So we would be adding pre-K classrooms. So we would need pre-K teachers. That will be offset by the tuition costs. We're also going to need an additional STEAM teacher or somebody to man the library and STEAM labs. It's something that we need anyway currently because we have the new tech standards that are coming in, tech and design principle standards. They start next year. So it's something that we're already planning for next year to integrate into our current budget year. So this project will just give that teacher a space that's dedicated to that curriculum, which is amazing. And I think that those are the big components. And obviously, if we bring students back into district, but we've been paying really high tuitions to keep them out of district, that money can be recaptured and reallocated to staff inside of the building. So will we have staffing increase? Yes, we will. But will we be offsetting it with saved tuition costs? Yes, we will.
Right. And then related question, so probably to you, Dr. Hughes. The question is asking, can we provide those services today, right, as good with what we have currently available? And I think that goes to whether or not, what percentage of those students that are being sent out of district and we're paying those tuition costs are pre-K, because 100% of those we could not service because we don't have pre-K currently. So then the question would be, are there any that are in kindergarten and above that we're still sending out that we can provide, services for today?
Yeah, we are sending a lot of kids out above kindergarten or pre-K. Pre-K is sent out, and that's approximately half of our kids, but the costs are not exorbitant. But when you send students out of district for special needs programs, that can be a substantial cost. And it's also a loss to our students not to be exposed to the entire spectrum of learners, right? It's not only the special needs students that benefit by being in their home school, it's also our general ed students that benefit by being exposed to different types of learners and learning empathy and compassion and how to assist. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to want to bring our kids from Haworth back to Haworth.
Thank you, Dr. Hughes. Paul, or potentially Ken, in terms of, the design options, when we were first considering the additions, why were we focused on expanding outward versus up, right? Additional floors, and what were the pros and cons that went into that? Again, don't want to break down all the micro components of the architectural design, but again, I think that's a fair question, because we've continued over the years to go out instead of vertical.
Well, I can answer that, Mike. Haworth School is blessed with a large campus. So it really doesn't make sense to go vertical when we have enough space to go horizontal. And then secondly, the existing school building really is not designed for a second floor. In other words, the roof structure would have to be significantly reinforced to start going up. And then you would start to get into the need to have an elevator put in and staircases. So that all adds to the cost. So what we've provided here is really a very cost-effective solution. We're using the land area that you already have, and we're simply just attaching to the side of your building, and it's very very cost-effective solution.
Great. And then in terms of the costs, another question just came in on what's included. So I know we've got supplies, materials, the resources. They're also asking if maintenance is accounted for in the plan. So can you just, in terms of what's included in the overall, 8.2 number?
The 8.2 number really is primarily construction costs and a project contingency.
Got it. So obviously no maintenance, and there's no staffing in any of those numbers.
No,
right?
That would not be included in a referendum.
Correct. Got it. And I don't know if we have it readily available, but for the areas, maybe for Paul, do we have the budget breakdown for the components, right, for the classrooms, gym, the renovation, the media center, et cetera. Do we have that breakdown? If not, we could always respond directly via email or post it to the info.
I don't have that file here, but we definitely have the menu of projects and the cost built in, whether it was construction, the furniture, equipment, contingencies, as what Ken mentioned. We have that document, but it's not here with me to share.
Okay, so we'll as a follow-up, we can send it direct to the person that asked the question, but we could also post it onto the website as well. Okay. Why were these projects selected over other ones? So I'll jump in on that, and also go a bit into, maybe I'll add on to it, into the why now. As a community, we brought together various folks 3+ years ago to identify goals and our strategic plan. Providing more innovative space was number one on the list. We also pointed to a need for modern classrooms with areas for collaboration, the flexible environment that Mrs. Voigt and Mrs. McCurry talked about. And this feedback helped shape the proposal for the makerspace and modernized media centers. Right, so it was all built off of the recommendations and the findings, and also tours of other school districts that are doing some of these things today. So I think that's high in terms of on the list for how we got to the what that's included in there, right? And then touring the surrounding districts, the pre-K. Well, it's something that we've always at least considered. Haworth is the last town within the Northern Valley districts to offer a pre-K. We're the only ones without one. So to be on par with the surrounding districts, and also to offer that to our community, we thought was of value. And then for the gym as well, I think it's time to modernize it and make it full size to fit the needs of our students, and also for the parents and people that attend those games. So that's why those projects were prioritized. In terms of the why now, I think Brian and Tony, you talked a bit about it. We're not going to get borrowing rates like we're seeing now. I mean, the bond rates in this 2% range. I mean, Paul, what was it when the last referendum was passed? What were our bond rates at that time? It was 5.5, 6. We're talking about over two. Right, over 2x, right, which increases the burden to taxpayers. So that's one area. The other one is the timing, right? Our operating costs right now, we're able to, as you can see from our capital reserve, able to add to some of this funding at this time when our operating costs are manageable. Over the course of time, operating costs at schools don't stay static. Operating costs increase over time. If you want to retain our great educators, retain our great staff, train and move them up within the system, those costs are something that we have to bear. And if we want to be fiscally responsible, we have to look at ways to reduce costs out of the system to accommodate for that, or we have to either reduce services or pass on costs to taxpayers to accommodate for that later on. When it becomes a point where we can no longer carry the budget at that level. So by expanding and incorporating pre-K, bringing students back into district, we're not only removing costs that we're currently paying today, we're also bringing in additional revenue. So as we're doing that, and as the costs are going up, we're allowing some release there. So it's a smart time to do it. This way we're planning ahead for future years when we know costs will be going up. We have a mechanism built in to reduce costs and add revenue, while borrowing costs are super low and aren't going to get more attractive than they are today. So from a timing perspective, the board felt that just from a financial standpoint, it made sense, without even taking into account the fact that the most important part of this, which is the students' education, career planning, career growth, getting them ready for the high school, getting them ready for jobs of the future. That's a number one priority. But from a timing standpoint, getting it done now and moving forward is, it just for us felt like it was the right time to bring it forward. We actually had attempted to try and do it prior, and we were trying to move this forward. Initial conversations prior to COVID, before we had our debt service of the last referendum that was paid off, so that there would be a net neutral cost to taxpayers. But we had to pay that debt service off, and that's no longer the case. And obviously, everyone knows we've been in 2 years of a pandemic, so we froze everything, and now we feel it's the right time to advance. Now that we're coming out of this, it seems like the light's at the end of the tunnel. So just to, I think I don't see any other questions popping in. Oh, no, there's one more. I think this one can go to Paul. So as our facilities manager and BA, Paul, this one kind of falls to you. What happens if the referendum fails?
Referendum fails. Of course, I don't think we give up on some of these improvements. I think we just have to go back to the drawing board, find other ways to get the work done. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to accomplish the full range of projects. And we believe that we need these projects to keep our students and district competitive. We lose out on the state aid, so that's another loss there of about $500,000. And like I said, I think it would probably have to be a piecemeal work. We'd have to try and fill in some gaps in each annual budget to try and fill those things in and to accomplish a STEM lab over a number of years. We don't know what those costs would be, but we try and have some creative thinking. But I'm coming in with a positive mindset. I kind of wanted to stand here and answer a question like this. Given my perspective, taking the BA hat off a little bit. For those of you that know me, I've been here almost 10 years. I've filled a number of roles, and that's allowed me to see, all the great things that the teachers and students and parents and the community here at Haworth have done. They've done some great things. And what I love about this project and what I feel is truly special is that this proposal has something for everyone. It's not just focused on athletics. It's not just focused on a STEM lab. It's from creating authentic learning spaces for the 21st century learner and upgrading the facility that's going to benefit the participants and the parents and the spectators. We're going to expand our special education program to keep Haworth students in Haworth. We're going to finally be able to offer pre-K to the residents. I think that's something that it's a win-win-win for all stakeholders, and it can really be something special. That's it.
Great. I think we had, look at, there's still a few more popping in. On the voting method, is vote by mail an option? And if so, when do applications need to be submitted by? I think, I don't know who on the panel can cover that. Do we have the dates? I think we have the info on the website. I don't know if anybody's able to bring that up, but I think the mail-in ballots need to be submitted by March 1st. And obviously the voting in person is March 8th. So if you're already registered to vote by mail, that'll be mailed out to you through the normal process. Needs to be submitted and post-stamped by the 1st, I believe. Here we go. It's coming up on the screen. March 1st, vote by mail application due. March 8th, vote by mail postmarked is still March 8th. So your application is due March 1st. March 8th is postmark, which is the same date as the actual election. So all that info is on the website, haworth.org/4thkids. Do we have a few other questions popping in? Going back to a makerspace, could the makerspace be created by securing existing space instead of build out? So recapture something else within the school versus a full addition.
I'll answer that. we currently are using all the spaces that could possibly be a makerspace, even to the degree that we're using a conference room that, in order to create classroom spaces. Especially with the pandemic, we have pretty substantial needs for space and getting kids caught up with coming back to school. So we just don't have the space right now to capture anywhere without impacting classes.
All right. Another one, how has this been promoted in the community? I can, cover some of that. Obviously, we've mentioned them multiple times. The website that's out there, haworth.org/for-the-kids. That's our main information site and portal. There will be a mailer going out to all Haworth residents. It's at the printer and will be distributed as soon as they can get it to the post office. So that'll be going out in the next couple of days and then mailed to all residents as well. So folks that aren't, wanting to read through the website, et cetera, that will be sent there as well. It'll have a link to the site. And we'll also be the next week, February 8th, we'll be doing a review at town council, just to update the council on this referendum and the project. And I think that's about it. Before the election, we'll also have another short mailer and reminder sent out a week or so before, just to make sure everyone knows to go and vote. But that's about it. I mean, we're, I think if it wasn't COVID times, we were trying to do some, in-house events and things like that. But obviously that's not on the table right now. Another question popping in about the last referendum and building program. Have those projects been paid off? And I know the answer to that they are, yes, those loans have been.
Our last payment was made in August of 2019.
2019, yep. And then any related for this new referendum, are there any other ways of getting additional state aid for this program? That's a general for anyone on the panel. I wouldn't know.
Sure, Mike, it's Tony. Currently, under the New Jersey Department of Education, the only aid available is if you issue debt through debt service aid. So that's the only aid available, is if your referendum passes and you have eligible projects, which you guys do.
Great. And then another one maybe for Dr. Hughes, could you talk about the general benefits for families in town whose children have outgrown the school? So it's just general benefits for anyone, whether they don't have children in the school anymore.
Sure. Our school facilities are not only for our students, but, our rec programs use them. It impacts tax and real estate values. It increases your value of a home based on the reputation of the school. That's one of the most important reasons to really make sure that we have cutting edge schools and are really taking care of the needs of all of our residents, because it actually draws more people into Haworth. And if you know me, you know that I don't want to just be a Northern Valley district. I want to be the best Northern Valley district. And I think that part of that is really making sure that we're offering our students first-class education. And you've benefited by having your kids in the schools. This is just the next evolution for those new people to the community. And it keeps our school vibrant and our community vibrant.
Great. And then for Paul, you had mentioned earlier that we weren't going to fully exhaust capital reserves, right? We need to have some reserves for emergencies. You mentioned a boiler, roof, things like that are quite expensive if an emergency happens. Can you talk a bit about what we'll have, assuming referendum passes, project moves forward, we tap into the 2 million as required now based on our plan, about how much is left in capital reserve for emergencies?
Yeah, I can ballpark it as best
Ballpark
I
is,
can.
yeah, I think ballpark is fine.
Yeah, we do. We if we don't have incur any large expenditures for the remainder of this school year, knock on wood, no pipe leaks, whatever it may be, we should have roughly between $600,000 and $700,000 in our capital reserve. In addition to, in 2020, the board established an emergency reserve as a backup that has another 50,000. So we'll have between 600 and 700 in the capital reserve, and then we'll have 50,000 in what's called labeled our emergency reserve account.
Got it. Another question about space in the classroom. So how do we ensure that the school has enough space and class size in the future as new projects are completed, and if there are more families moving in and kids enrollment is going up? How do we balance that while the projects are underway? So over the next two and a half years, and that's related to current class size, right? I mean, because there's no other place to put additional children but in existing classrooms. So maybe we can touch a bit on current average class size as well as part of that answer.
Yeah, our current average class sizes are really in the mid-teens, which is a nice place to be. Could they go higher? They could with the space that we have, but we don't like to go too high in each class because we want to have the personal interactions between the kids and the teachers. We want them to have small class sizes because it impacts them better. They get more one-on-one time with the teachers. So we're just going to have to continuously monitor and make sure that we are responsive to class sizes. However, we are limited in space, and you can only have so many sections in our building right now.
Thank you, Dr. Hughes. This one's for Paul. This is one that was near and dear to, I think, the board's heart as we were trying to address in advance of re-entry into school and the COVID environment and ventilation. This question wants to know, in light of COVID, has ventilation been improved, or if not, will it be improved in the future through either this proposal or other means? So I know, Paul, if you wouldn't mind, I know the answer, but I feel like you.
Oh, listen, thank you. We definitely have improved our ventilation system. Over the last summer, we installed an ionization system throughout the entire HVAC system, throughout the entire building, where the contaminants or the antigens are killed within 30 seconds. All of our filters are the highest classification. We have air purifiers in rooms that don't have windows. We've really kind of upped our game there over the past 18 months.
Great, thank you. I don't see anything else popping in, and we are about 10 minutes too. Okay, so we can close it out maybe 10 minutes early. It's been a privilege, obviously, to engage tonight with all the residents, and particularly those who are outside of our immediate school network. We firmly believe that a great school is a backbone of a great community. So these district proposed improvements would reach every Haworth home. The high caliber schools boost property values, as Dr. Hughes had mentioned. They attract and retain residents, and they contribute to the overall stability of our community. So please make your voice heard. March 8th, as is on the screen, is the vote date. Please go to the website for more information about voting. We covered it earlier, but the dates are there as well for mail-in as well as in-person voting. The proposed projects are all online, as well as our funding strategy and some FAQs. So we'll update those based on some of the questions we got tonight, so that folks that weren't part of the forum can see our responses there as well. And want to thank everyone, especially our panel, for making the time this evening and for participating. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, and look forward to seeing you around town.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out.